Thank you so much. I'll take your questions now.
Hi, my name's Draven. I'm curious to your thoughts on with the art you did with the video game. When counter-protesters came out calling you a terrorist and whatnot, how do you conceptualize the possibility that you may have aggravated and further induced hatred of people that were Muslim or terrorists or whatever?
And if you remember the mode of operation I was in, intentionally antagonize in order to engage. So I very much mirror the rhetoric of video games when we ask about these games. There's so much hate in them. They're targeted Muslims and Arabs and people of color. They said it's just a video game. I used the same argument, nothing but reversed it. Then, and I think what happened is it was the right strategy, because so many people who come against it, they are the very people who use hatred language. So at the end, it not only allowed these people to come out with their rhetoric, but it was very helpful to the community, because the person who shut down the show have done that 3 times. And at the end, he lost his job because people come together and forced the government in Troy to compensate the gallery, to reopen, and then to purchase another land to use it as a summer theater. So at the end, I think it was very successful. But I totally understand your question that could antagonize people, but that was the intention.
Thank you.
Yep. I understand some of you had to leave, so don't feel obligated to stay. There's Boris. Or you could ask the question if you.
Can I use my privilege and ask the question first? So I want to dig a little bit deeper into this question. I don't know if you heard the expression "Minnesota nice."
No.
Okay, it's to do with avoiding tension and conflict at all costs, interpersonal tension. So I wonder if you can speak a little bit more about the value of conflict and value of tension in general.
The value of.
Yeah. It seems that at least the first part of your work, the first chapter, a lot had to do with that.
Yeah.
Creating conflict in order to get out of it and learn something on the way.
So there are, with artist practice, I'm advocating for this direction called encounters. As an artist, you build an encounter knowing who are your audience and what's the trigger mechanism in that. And it could be using antagonism is one of them. You use aesthetic pleasure versus aesthetic pain in one of them. But the mode is intentionally to antagonize people in order to engage. It's a mode of engagement, very similar to shooting Iraqi. When you and this is common specifically because of the separation of these 2 zones that I'm playing with, the comfort zone and the conflict zone. I noticed when I came here in the 90s, my audience were very disengaged, specifically audience in United States. And I was really shocked. While United States bombing Iraq and not many people were engaged in the dialogue, that very own government waging a war in their names against another nation. And I think that was the inspiration from it. and I didn't conceptualize then. It was very natural to be strong, vocal, and to bring people together through not through aesthetic, but rather through antagonization. And I think later on, you could see as the conflict evolve and as my practice evolve, the different mode of operation also, they change the entire work. And to me, when we talk about social, political issues, I really don't think it is possible to talk about them without alienating somebody. It's not possible. But the result or the intention, it has to be not for the sake of antagonization, but rather for the sake of engagement. And at the end of every one of these projects, there is reward to the people who participate in it, whether that reward deliver immediately or later on. For example, so many people who shot me on the internet felt they needed to come back and apologize for the action. But most important is people who were shooting, they were informed by each other. And I think at the end of the video, I said, I really have no resentment against anybody who shot me. So it's just a mode of operation, and intentional. And I think that mode of operation have been practiced by so many people and continue to be practiced by a lot of artists who are intentionally adapting it in order to engage others, and mostly political and social issues. You have a question?
Would you speak about your choice of doing your agitations within the venues of art and art institutions as opposed to the rest of the society at large? You talk about comfort zones. Is it that there's some safety and comfort for you there? And also the population that you're addressing is self-selecting and probably has a distinct political leaning within these venues. So I would just wonder if you could speak about that.
Yeah, it's not just these venues. It just happened I picked up a few projects, but also time has shifted, you know. For me, it was visceral reaction to these political issues, and I thought it is very appropriate to adopt this mode of operation and a practice in these institutions as part of raising awareness and engaging people as well. But again, I mean, the result were in every institution was a profound effect on people to bring them together and acknowledge their disengagement. Yeah, there's a question there.
Thank you. I have a very concrete question followed by a more abstract question. So with Shoot in Iraqi, how often were you physically struck with the paintballs? And then could you talk a little bit more about your relationship to pain?
Pain. Oh.
In that and in the tattoo.
These are really two great questions. So first, about being hit. And I think, I really didn't think about it that when I entered the space. I thought my role is to stand in front of the gun and getting hit. But soon after, the body took over. And always I said, the body has its own mind. So the body start taking over to protect itself. And soon after, everything it become amplify. I could start hearing the tick of the gun even if it moves slowly. I start being aware, the body start being aware how to avoid them. So at the end, I avoided more than I was hit. So that's one. The second great question you just posed is pain. And this goes back to two things. One of them is the separation of the zones, right? Comfort and conflict. And because the body has its own language, its own mind, once we put the body, my body, in a painful way, there is a different language, a different interaction between me and the viewers. And that interaction breeds or generate empathy, and then generate engagement. And this is the second. I was thinking about where did that come from, the idea of pain. Of course, it's a performance language. One of the greatest things about performance is it is unmediated medium. It's immediacy impact from it. But I didn't understand I was engaged in it and was inspired by completely different things. As an Iraqi, as a Shiite, live in south of Iraq, Shiite commemorate their history through their bodies by either cutting or hitting themselves. So every year as a child, we have the Battle of Karbala, which is commemorated in one of the imams in the Shia faith, being enacted in every single town in Iraq. And as a kid, I saw that, how pain is being used to commemorate history and live it through it. And I think that was one of the effect that being influenced me in my practice. But really, a big part of it was coming to United States and seeing the disengagement, and I thought automatically start thinking of performance. Performance is because I saw the immediate impact on my viewer through using the body. And I must confess, I am not doing that again. Because unlike any other thing, performance is real, is not acting. A performance, you must assume that you must own it in order to communicate to your audience. You must be true to it. And it's not acting, it's not, as Marina Abramovich is saying, it's ketchup, not blood. It is blood. Yes, Tom.
Wafaa, it's a complicated question to ask you, but your work also raises, for me, a lot of thinking about war, the nature of war, right? So you brought up the idea of disengaged war, that somebody can be killing people in Iraq from, a place in Houston, Texas, right?
Yeah.
And now we're also experiencing cyber war, where it's not even physical anymore, it's psychological attacks on people through cyber war. So, to me, one of the powers of there are many aspects of your work that are powerful, but is this forcing us to come to grips with the fact that war itself has changed. It's still violence, but now it's of this disengaged and psychological quality to it that I don't think we're prepared for, because war always had this aspect of the people engaged in war were both in danger. You could both get shot. Now, nobody is getting shot.
Yeah.
But we're engaged in now a global war of a different kind. So any thoughts about that?
Boy, that is really complicated question.
Yeah.
If I have a choice not to answer a question, that would be it.
Yeah, sure, I realize.
But really, I think part of it is I think by design, because once you see bodies, and I think with images that filter to the state, there are cleaned up. When you watch images from different networks, as opposed to, let's say, CNN broadcasting live war from Iraq, it was surgically altered. It was so clean because the effect of seeing other body, it motivates us. We oppose to it. And I think now war has changed dramatically because of the way we are connected. And it's no longer you need to cross a border in order to effect. And I agree with you. It's completely psychological warfare.
So with the project Shoot in Iraqi, I'm wondering about the yellow of the paintballs and if there's anything special with the yellow.
Great question. So when I come up with that idea of, I think the idea, you have to acknowledge it was all inspired by being in America, from the paintball to the internet connection to the cyber war. And I built a team out of just my friends. We come together. One of them is in robotic, the other one in programming. I was the target. So we debated what kind of color, and we thought of red, but then people object to it, saying this is too violent. We thought multiple colors, and at the end we end up with very muddy colors when they mix. Then one of the team members suggested yellow, and I asked the very question. And my team member said, because it is support the troop ribbon. Yep. So it has a significance, and so many, even soldiers were really moved by that gesture. And I remember vividly, and I write in my book, I write about that event of one day one of the light lamp was destroyed to the ground, and a few hours later somebody walked in and introduced himself, and he said he had 2 bags with him, and he said, I saw the table lamp was destroyed, and I brought you light bulbs and lamp so you could, I saw you very emotional about it. And I was, because it was the only thing that life in the space. But before he left, he told me, he said, I'm a Marine, and I wish every Marine could see this project. They would not shoot another Iraqi or anybody else. That's the effect of when you open a space, I think. You bring people together, whether you antagonize them, whether you use aesthetic or even playful ideas to bring their people together, because it's not a singular, it's not a statement anymore. It's really a platform, and it has no end state. It could evolve in so many different directions based on the input of people who are engaging in it. Questions here?
Hi, you just brought up a little bit about the collaborative team that formed this piece, Shoot an Iraqi, and I was wondering what your studio looks like. Like, do you share space with other people that you regularly collaborate with, or how do you form your collaborations?
My studio now, or?
Your studio now.
I have my own space. But really, the studio is so different, so clean now. I'm continue building these maquettes, so these models. So the practice is completely different. But also, I collaborate with a lot of people outside the studio practice. So think about the studio is, for me, is to run from the rest of the world and contemplate their creating piece. But at the same time, if you think about these projects, really there is no. It's not possible for one person could make all of these things by him or herself. But I see collaboration as a way of engaging people as well. And I find out, and to be completely honest, I find out when you bring people who could invest emotionally, intellectually in the project and all part of it, it's much more powerful, and they're much more engaged than, let's say, you pay people to execute some sort of thinking. That's why I always encourage collaboration among artists. You have a question?
I do. It's also about collaboration. I'm curious about specifically your collaboration with U.S. vets. The two pieces with the miniature statues and the chromotherapy one.
Yeah.
Could you talk more about building those relationships and how in collaboration there was compensation, whatever that looked like for you, and compensation and credit given to those people?
So a third project I didn't have time to show today. It's called it's a project I collaborated with the veterans at the veteran first triennial ever in Chicago. And in it, I collaborated with a group of veterans that turned their uniform into paper, and a group called Combat Paper. And through that collaboration, instead of offering the books to give as a reward to collecting books to send to Baghdad, we staged this intervention when veterans come to the gallery at the Chicago Cultural Center to donate their uniforms and turn to paper to send to give the paper as a reward, but also to take that paper to Iraq to the printmaking department. I know I heard from so many Iraqis, they're unhappy with me because of my collaboration with veterans. And I'll tell you, I'm very honest about it. And I think part of it, I really know the position they're in. First, many of them, not by choice, go into war. You know, poverty is a backdoor to be in the military. So a lot of them wanted to make living and feed their families. Second, I was in Iraq when every single summer I would be taken to camp and trained for 3 months as a soldier. And I know if I didn't leave Iraq, I probably would have ended up in that position and killing somebody. Because when you put yourself and you have a choice, either you get killed and somebody killed you. How many of us will say, no, just kill me, let's go? It's not a choice. And I also know what it is to lose a family member. I lost my brother, and that destroyed the entire family. So I sympathize and empathize with the families in the United States when they lost a family member. And finally, the post-traumatic stress disorder is a monster that is killing so many people in silence. And I don't know if you know, that is 7 veterans commit suicide every single day in the United States. That's a mind-boggling statistic. 7 families every day mourn their loss. So on top of that, that disease that never was acknowledged by the military until recently because of this machoism. And you just have to be a man. You can't show any pain. And I'm really happy with these multiple projects I did with them. We connected on that level of what it is be like to go through this every single minute of your life. And I am happy to raise awareness about the post-traumatic stress disorder, but also I am happy to raise awareness of their position when they came back home. When I hired them for minimum wage, to build Saddam statues, that was a message to the government. Said, hey, these are your heroes, right? How is it possible they don't have jobs? And the veterans themselves appreciate that gesture too, you know. And so I'm in touch with many of them through many different places, seeing, and I think they see the world really different in different ways. Many of them reject the idea of war. Let's end it here, huh? Or there's, all right, well, thank you so much again.
Thank you so much, Wafaa,
Pleasure.
for being here and for this infinite empathy.